Welcome to the Frontline Herbalism podcast with your host Nicole Rose from the Solidarity Apothecary. This is your place for all things plants and liberation. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Frontline Herbalism podcast. This episode is just a kind of shameless plug for the Herbalism PTSD and Traumatic Stress course. So I'm going to be diving into 5 reasons why you should sign up. Yeah, I just want to say this kind of marketing is like 100% out of my comfort zone. I'm very happy designing graphics and writing things that are helpful for folks and amplifying projects and campaigns. But when it comes to actually like selling things, like it's definitely out of my comfort zone. But I also kind of need to lean into that financially with having a little baby very soon. And yeah. So I'm just here to share a little bit more about the course and why I think people should sign up now. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Please remember that the course closes on Thursday, which is tomorrow. Depending on when you listen to this episode, but Thursday, the 2nd of November. I'm not sure what time, but I'll probably shut it down around 10 o'clock at night, depending on the old nausea and vomiting and pregnancy and how I'm doing. But yeah, if you want to join the course, I really encourage you to sign up. Okay, so 5 reasons to join the Herbalism PTSD and Traumatic Stress course. First one, these skills are useful for a lifetime, okay? So learning these skills, whether that's to do with understanding trauma or whether that's how to make plant medicines, how to harvest and forage, how to work with your body, like those skills are never ever not going to be useful, because I hate to say it, but the world is continuously traumatizing, right? And it's not likely to get less traumatic anytime soon. Like look what's happened in the past few weeks, for example, in Palestine. Like, you know, I'm 35 and yeah, the amount of social change I've seen in my lifetime is, you know, crazy, like different uprisings and waves of oppression and everything else, and like everything happening around the world, different invasions, different wars, different resistance movements. Like it's not like we are in this like utopia where horrible shit is gonna just like magically stop happening. You know, we've got the climate crisis, we've got increasing state violence, we've got increasing fascism and shifts to far right states, let alone like all the kind of fallout of like late stage capitalism. And then even if we're not thinking about those huge like systemic things that are happening, just being a human, right? Like you bounce up against difficult, challenging life experiences. And, you know, I don't think there is a single complete definition of trauma, but the kind of Greek framing of it is that it's like a wound or an injury. And I think we are wounded like through our lifetimes, and that is part of being human. You know, like we will lose people we love, you know, relationships will end, people will just have like kind of chronic stress of just surviving capitalism, right? Of losing jobs, of being on benefits, of, you know, having tough times. Like these are all things that people experience. And obviously there's, you know, vast amounts of different kinds of oppression that will also put us in states of chronic stress and expose us to a lot of trauma. So I just want to name that like these are things that are going to be ongoing, that we need to have tools in our toolbox to respond to, you know, to be able to support ourselves and each other. So yeah, I think having skills to support yourself and other people to navigate stress and distress and traumatic stress, like those skills will be like eternally useful. And, you know, like I think in terms of plant medicine, like if you think back to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, when it was really clear how much kind of capitalist supply chains were affected, right, in terms of access to things like medicine and protective clothing and stuff. And, you know, like working with plant medicines, like it does bring us this like next level of kind of resilience and autonomy, you know, to things like climate change, to things like increasing state violence, you know. And like I know maybe the phrase got a bit tiring, like mutual aid through the pandemic, but really like that's where we're at, right? Like we know that like the state isn't going to look after us. Like we need to take care of each other, we need to take care of ourselves, we need to keep building infrastructure for more autonomy, for more resilience. And I think plant medicines are just like an amazing kind of part of that. So, you know, like I write on the course page that our goal is for you to be able to build a medicine cabinet of allies that can support you negotiating and navigating a lifetime of experiences. And, you know, I also want to emphasize that like the course isn't just for people that identify as having PTSD, you know, like I think people might not feel like what they've been through is traumatic enough to warrant that label, or they don't have enough of the symptoms, or they don't get flashbacks like they've seen on movies. But like, I really believe like no one goes through life unchanged. Like no one goes through life without some form of pain or suffering or challenges. And obviously how much you experience is kind of unevenly distributed in terms of oppression and trauma. But I still think it's, like a very human thing. And you don't need to be kind of suffering from PTSD to get something out of this course. Like, you know, if you are a human, you will be interacting with traumatized people all the time, you know, whether it's in relationships and someone who's like struggling to, you know, to trust you or to feel safe in their relationship because of what they've been through, then having like better insight into common trauma dynamics and their different nervous system states will be really helpful. So yeah, I just want to say that like if you are a care worker, if you're doing kind of community organizing, like if you're doing any kind of like social struggle justice kind of work, like you need an understanding of trauma because it just affects absolutely everything. And we can't depend on these really pathetic trauma-informed like mainstream liberal courses that just pathologize people and put them into boxes. And yeah, we need much more kind of liberating understandings of what trauma means, which gets to the next point, number 2. Okay, so the second reason to join the Herbalism PTSD and Traumatic Stress course is that understanding trauma can change your life. Like how you frame trauma will change your life. Like finding liberating ways to find trauma will literally feel liberating. You know, we can unlearn all the sort of bullshit fed to us about being mad or crazy or insane or unlovable. You know, like part of the kind of rupture of trauma is like worldviews about ourselves, about us being people who are kind of screwed up and unlovable and too fucked up. And, you know, all of these other messages we tell ourselves, you know, we're constantly bashing up against systems that, you know, want to put us in bloody psychiatric hospitals or prisons or whatever. But really, like, we can frame trauma really differently in a way that will put what we've experienced in a much broader context, in a way that encounters like complexity and is kind of nourishing and compassionate and is like, just framing our experiences very, very differently. And that's like a big part of the first module, like all about trauma, is looking at how kind of capitalist or liberal frameworks frame trauma, right? That it's all in the brain and that you're sick and that you need medication and all of this stuff. And looking at more liberating ways, like, you know, trauma being felt through the body, through the mind, through the soul. And, you know, looking at like indigenous ways of healing and supporting people and like collective responses to stress. That, you know, trauma is not something that is an individual responsibility. Like it does need collective care to prevent trauma and also to respond to trauma. So yeah, I do think finding a different way to understand your experiences can feel liberating. And that's what my kind of goal has been with this course. I also think having a language to like describe what you're experiencing is very life-changing. So you can generate like much more compassion for yourself and others. So for me, this is why learning about, for example, polyvagal theory was like so liberating, because suddenly I had language, you know, I could tell my partner, sorry, I'm just feeling very triggered and activated right now. Or I can tell them, you know, they know when I'm in that kind of safe and social state. They know when I'm kind of quite off baseline and I'm about to explode, like, you know, and we've got tools to talk about it. We've got a shared common language to understand each other. And I think once you have that, like, it is very life-changing, and you do feel much more compassion for yourself, because I know that something I've said when I'm highly activated is very different to how I'm feeling when I'm feeling like safe and social. And, you know, like, I didn't want to make promises on the course page of like, oh, hey, working through all these videos is going to like cure your PTSD or something. Like, it's totally not where I've wanted to go with the course, making those sorts of promises. And, you know, I've kind of tried to be really explicit about what the course offers and doesn't offer. But like, I do think that by having an understanding of your body and your different nervous system states, and, you know, addressing things like nutritional deficiencies, looking at collective responses. So, you know, where do you need more collective support? How can you connect with the land more? Like, all of these things, like, I do really think people can find like some respite from PTSD. And I know that because I've had a lot of feedback from learners doing the course that, you know, it has kind of worked for them in terms of helping them get to where they need to get to, in terms of understanding their bodies and feeling, more self-compassion and, developing new tools. Like herbalism is very, very life-changing for people. I've seen people have very severe anxiety and then take plant medicines, and that's just, help them really turn a corner in their life, for example. So I don't want to make wild promises, but I do think like there are things that will help. And for example, reducing nightmares, reducing anxiety, reducing panic attacks, helping you feel more safe and social, like with the right tools and resources, like I know that people can get there, if that makes sense. And if you're wondering what feeling more like safe and social means, it's a kind of like polyvagal theory about one of our kind of nervous system states. But generally it means that we can have like healthier and happier relationships. And, for me, in terms of trauma recovery, it was about really learning how to actually receive love, receive care, receive support, not just push it away constantly. And I think, like polyvagal theory especially can help you get to that place. And I think it's also like expanding your kind of trauma toolbox. So it's like in the collective responses to traumatic stress, I work through different kind of, it's like a framework around how can we respond to trauma, like revolving around like opportunities to rest, opportunities to kind of renew, opportunities for like reconnection, and also opportunities for resistance, right? Like in terms of actually addressing what is causing all this trauma in the world. And, this section of the course really looks at like a whole bunch of tools, like beyond herbalism, whether that's movement or dancing or trauma releasing exercises or EDMR or brain spotting. Like I kind of want to give people like a whole toolbox of things that they could then investigate and experiment with, and also kind of like help you locate like where plant medicines fit in your life and in terms of your kind of whole ecosystem of support. I really, really do believe having a more nuanced, liberating, expansive view on trauma can be really life-changing. Just even creating this course has been life-changing for me. Like I'm still on this constant learning journey, right, of, being really distressed, doing shitloads of self-education, experimenting with different types of therapy and support, constantly analyzing it all politically, learning from loads of people, and then just trying to bring it together like in a more kind of structured way. Like I wish I had something like this, like 10, 20 years ago to work through. I think I could have had a completely different life. But I think, having things in frameworks is really helpful. And expanding our knowledge of trauma is, it's never good. It's never going to hurt, right? Like it's only going to bring us more in-depth understanding of each other and ourselves. Okay, reason 3 of why you should join the Herbalism, PTSD and Traumatic Stress course is the plants are calling you, okay? So like we need plant medicines like more than ever. And if you're someone who's been like, hey, I'm quite interested in this herbal thing, or hey, I'd quite like to learn more, or like, hey, I keep seeing dandelions everywhere I go, I really feel like the plants are calling you. And the best part about plants is like we are never alone. Like it is never too late to learn about herbalism. It will always enrich your life, whether that's enriching your life with more kind of learning, or whether that's like improving your own health because of having like more like wild plants in your diet, or having more of your own medicines. Like ultimately, really, like I think herbalism is about relationships, and I think herbalism enables us to have a much deeper relationship with the land, and that is like the most nourishing and strengthening and life-affirming thing. And I really think it is like the absolute antidote to kind of capitalist horror, is the fact that, with plants, like we are never alone. Like we are on the kind of winning side, if that makes sense, because it isn't possible to completely destroy and repress nature, right? Like we are nature. So I think the course is designed in a way to encourage you to do a lot of like connective work with the land, whether that's like developing like a plant ally practice or a sit spot, or just looking at like the 1,000,001 ways that you can make medicine. Like it's all about, how do I put this into practice? How do I build a relationship with these plants? But with some structure and support of how to do that safely, and how to do that in a kind of way that can accelerate your own learning, for example, and deepen that relationship. And just plant medicines can like really improve our lives, right? They can help improve our sleep. Like having better sleep is absolutely life-changing for people with chronic illness, or people just struggling, to cope with this society and this world. Like having sleep in your back pocket is something that, if you can't get to sleep, you can just put on a bit of lavender oil or take a sip of tincture and it will really help. Like I think that cannot be underestimated in terms of what positive effect that's going to have on your life, like throughout your life. Plant medicines can support with our digestion, they can help prevent disease, they can reduce inflammation. And ultimately, I guess the focus on this course is like aiding our nervous system, right, to rest and recover, and having tools and support and allies to do that. Yeah, and I think the approach with this course is really learning kind of like the principles and the tools of like how to connect with plants and like build your herbalism skills. So like I've mentioned, kind of plant ally work and working with one plant at a time. I also have like a whole lesson about kind of deepening your relationship with herbalism, of like, how do you find your crew? Like, how do you find your community? Like, how do you determine where you want to go with your herbalism, Like, how do you determine what kind of herbalist you want to be? And, like I've got a massive kind of Google Drive of resources, of all sorts of links to different kind of radical herbalism projects and community projects and different people doing amazing things. And I think, there's a lot more to herbalism than just becoming a clinical herbalist. And by having a kind of open mind, like there's so many directions you can take, right? And I think this course will help you clarify like where you want to go. And for people who are already like practicing herbalists, like I think it will really help you expand your training around trauma, and that will really help your clients, because for most of us who've experienced trauma, like seeing health professionals isn't easy. Like it's very easy to be triggered. It's very easy to be put down and minimized. It's very easy for our kind of class experiences to be ignored, or for people to kind of invisibilize different forms of oppression. And like, I wish herbalism was this amazing, welcoming, liberating space, but it's simply not. Like, a lot of practitioners are causing a lot of harm. And I think investing in your kind of training around trauma will, just improve your practice like tenfold, And also like you'll get really in-depth knowledge around like plant profiles. So, it's kind of like really focusing on like nervines, like these plants with an affinity for the nervous system, like really trying to understand the nuances of when to prescribe them, which ones, what are their actions, are they relaxants, are they hypnotics, like I think, the plant profiles really offer that kind of depth that you don't really get with other training, in my experience. And then just like practically, for people who are new to herbalism, I like to think I'm a very like straightforward person, like everything's like structured quite well and bullet points and blah, blah, blah. And like, I've got lessons in there about medicine making. So like, I've made my own medicine for a really long time. I'd like to think I'm a really good medicine maker. Like everyone who tries my medicine kind of notices the difference to other kind of suppliers and things. Like I think it is a skill and an art, and I share that with you. So, we learn how to make tinctures, how to make glycerites, how to make infused oils, how to make ointments. I've got like recipe handouts you can download, things like that. And also like how to harvest sustainably, and I talk about kind of colonial relationships to land and kind of what is like appropriate in terms of harvesting and wildcrafting. And, we talk about reciprocity and how do we take care of like wild plant communities, for example. And also just like how to do all of this stuff safely, like how to forage safely, how to identify plants. Like if you are literally like super new to herbalism, then this stuff will be like really at your level, if that makes sense. But if you are really experienced in herbalism, I think it will also really speak to you too, a lot of the content. Okay, reason 4 of why you should join the Herbalism, PTSD and Traumatic Stress course is you can go at your own pace. Okay, so the course has been designed so that it's not a pressure, because people with PTSD or ongoing traumatic stress are already under so much pressure, like all the time from all directions, whether that's historical things triggering them or whether that's like their current reality. Like the last thing on earth I've ever wanted to do is create something that is going to add to someone's burden on their shoulders, So like the course has been designed in this like really zero pressure way. So it's like you have lifetime access. You can stop and start, you can join tomorrow and devour 3 modules and then come back to it again in 5 years' time. You can join now and not start until next summer when you have the headspace. Like there's no pressure to start it, like if that makes sense. Like I didn't want it to feel like another thing on your to-do list, like another thing to put in your calendar that you have to commit to, that's going to take some of your like precious spoons. Like I've wanted to design it so that it's like a gift to you. It's like a time for nourishment. It's a time for you to focus on yourself, and that focus will then kind of ripple out to your beloveds and your community. But like, I really want people to work at it in a healthy pace. And I think especially the first module all about trauma, like I think it is hard to like listen to that stuff, you know, and to dive deep into that stuff. I think can bring up a lot in people, and I think you need the spaciousness sometimes to process and revisit. You know, maybe you join and you're actually not even ready for that content and you just want to watch the medicine making modules and read a few of the plant profiles. Like, you know, like I want people to be able to kind of chop and change like based on your mood and your needs. So like it might be, for example, that you have a client you're supporting who's really struggling with nightmares. So you kind of search the course material and you think, right, okay, I'm going to focus on the module about sleep. And then from that, you're like, okay, I'm going to look at this plant profile. And that way it's kind of like action learning, right? It's kind of like learner driven. You can choose what you're interested in, follow your passion, and then, you know, kind of fill in the blanks. And I think that's actually a much more effective way that people learn. And yeah, the other thing is like, I really think for people who've experienced trauma, like often relationships can be very difficult, right? Like, you know, interpersonal dynamics can be very difficult. Like we can be triggered very easily by people, you know, trusting people is really hard, you know, like, and I think I didn't want to create a space that was like allegedly safe, you know, like I think you need to put in a lot of time as a facilitator to create a container where people feel okay about talking about sensitive topics, like, for example, trauma. And I think that stuff does work better face to face, but I also think it takes time and energy and care, and people need support. They need someone to go to. And like, I just didn't want to create like some forum where people are just like triggering each other and upsetting each other or saying like racist shit or sexist shit. Like yeah, I mean, I also don't have the spoons to like monitor that stuff, but I think for people that have experienced trauma and PTSD, like I do think it's like somehow the last thing we need. And I think being able to just hear your own voice and not be hypervigilant about what other people think or how they're feeling or what's going on or like caretaking the group dynamics, I think you can focus on yourself and how the material's making you feel. And it can be like a treat, right? Like it can be like, I'm going to light a candle and make a herbal tea and watch a video tonight. And it feels like indulgent and nice and nourishing. Like that's the kind of energy I want from the course, if that makes sense. I've also tried to like design the course in a like non-oppressive way. So there isn't this like achievement pressure. Like I don't think people should be like graded on like essays about their own trauma or stuff, right? Or like, hey, this is my learning journal where I'm reflecting on this. Like I've heard all sorts of wild things around trauma in some of the other herbal medicine courses. And I just, yeah, like, I'm sorry, but it's too intimate, it's too personal, it's not something we need bloody grading on. So yeah, I didn't want to put in this kind of pressure. Likewise, I mean, I do think things like quizzes, multiple choice, like that stuff can really consolidate your learning. And I'm kind of creating this course at the moment called Do No Harm, which is like a herbal safety course. And with something like that, I probably will have some kind of optional quizzes in there. But for something like this content, I don't think it is valuable because I think everything is like so nuanced and subjective and expansive that kind of, yeah, trying to narrow that down into some sort of like performative achievement stuff. I'm not into it. And the other thing is that like, obviously like it's designed so you can just watch the videos, right, and work through the material. But there is like lots of other things available. So I mentioned this Google Drive already, but there's like so many resources. Like you could spend a lifetime like reading all these like articles. Like I've tried to reference everything. I've put reading lists in there, like films in there, like links to other herbalists and other projects. I've put all the like every single plant profile where I've like quoted some sort of like clinical research, for example, like a human trial with plants. I've put like the original paper like in that Google Drive. So like you can go like as little or as shallow or as deep as you like, if that makes sense. Like one of my absolute bugbears when I'm doing courses is like random teachers just like saying things and I'm like, what are your sources? And it's just because it's like herbal hearsay. There's no like understanding of where that particular things come from. And I know there's like beautiful parts of that with oral traditions and things. I'm not being like some kind of intense biomedical scientist here, but what I'm saying is like, I've tried to put in that like primary reading material so that if that's you and that's your brain and that's your style, then you can just like take it away, right? You can just enjoy that. Like I love reading research papers and stuff. So I've tried to include all of that so that you can kind of forage for what you're interested in. So yeah, so that's my point 4. It's like you can go at your own pace. Like you can sign up now and start working on it next year or in 2 years time or in 3 years time. Like it is completely in your control. You have autonomy of it. And I think a big part of trauma recovery is actually people feeling in control of their lives. Like that's often what we're craving. If we've had a life where things have felt chaotic and out of our control, then like actually having something that you have autonomy over how you manage your studies, I think is really, really helpful. So yeah, you can go at your own pace. All right, point 5 of why you should join the Herbalism PTSD and Traumatic Stress course is it's not going to be available next year. Okay, so I know what people are like. I love, obviously, it's not my first radio. I know that as soon as I close it, I'll get emails from people all over the shop being like, oh, I missed it. Can I join? Da, 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 da. And the answer is no. Like when those doors are closed, those doors are closed. And it's like out of respect for my time and also all the people who can't access it at the same time. So it's like, I don't want to say it's now or never, but I just want to say like, you can join now and then return to it next year. You can join now with the Solidarity Price code, access it for free, and then put a donation in 2 months' time or 6 months' time or a year's time. Like it is designed with that much kind of flexibility. And I know I've said it a few times, but I also know that sometimes it takes a while for things to sink in. But I'm nearly 4 months pregnant now. My baby's due in April. So unless things really turn around with my pregnancy, I don't think I'm going to have the energy to launch it in March like I did last year. And I really want to take some time off with the baby in those like early months. So I can't imagine launching it in September. Obviously, I don't want to promise anything because who knows what will happen. I might come into some money and be able to hire an assistant or something. I don't know. But I kind of just want to communicate again that like it might not be available to access for a long time. So it is better to kind of join it now than think, okay, I'll do it next year and then be disappointed that I'm not launching it, if that makes sense. And like I said in point 4, it's completely self-paced. So you can join now and then, actually start working on the materials like when you're ready. Like it's absolutely no pressure. Okay, so that is all the reasons why you should join the Herbalism PTSD and Traumatic Stress course. I hope you listen to this in time to enroll. Yeah, I do think it's a powerful offering. I have had lots of amazing testimonials that are on the website. In fact, I was actually going to read some of them. So Ash said, this course was incredible. I learned so much about myself and my brain, despite having PTSD my entire life and being in therapy on and off for decades, as well as I did herbalism and supporting all the folks like me. Nicole has written a love letter to the suffering and covered it in rose petals. I cannot recommend it enough. Peach said, I wanted to thank Nicole for this absolutely amazing course and space. I was first introduced to her work via a podcast with Propaganda by the Seed, and since have printed The Prisoner's Herbal, listened to her podcast, done the Glycerite course, and now the Herbalism PTSD and Traumatic Stress course. What keeps me coming back is how much care and intention is put into each project she creates. I was looking for a space to deep dive into herbalism without the toxicity of institutions or traditional learning spaces. Nicole provided exactly what I was looking for. I have filled a whole notebook with information and resources that I continuously come back to. I appreciate the balance of her being extremely detailed with the content while also trying her best to keep every course as accessible and approachable as possible. I would recommend this course or any other one to any of my friends looking to engage with plants and how we can work with them. And Michelle said, I'd been studying herbalism for quite a while when I came across Nicole's course, Herbalism, PTSD and Traumatic Stress. I can say without a doubt that she delivers a ton of helpful content and honestly can feel the energy she poured into creating this. I've learned a lot, and with the many resources she provides, I know this information will be helpful to the clients I work with and myself. I highly recommend the Herbalism, PTSD and Traumatic Stress course to anyone wanting to explore this topic. Okay, and I could literally read like all of these out, but I'm just going to suggest you go to the course page to read them, but just one last one. Glena said, highly recommend learning from Solidarity Apothecary. Nicole's teaching style is so accessible and the curriculum she designs highlights the need for collective action against state violence and systemic issues while cultivating practices of self-care. This isn't another capitalist self-care course centering individual wellness. This is proper embodied praxis and real community care skills. Go check out Nicole's books and courses and support her work in prison abolition and medicine making for refugees. Oh, okay. last one, I promise. Someone on Instagram whose handle is Planthropocines says, Solidarity Apothecary, I have so much gratitude to you for creating this course that brings such critical and nuanced framings of trauma together with deep plant medicine. It is going to transform so many lives. Okay, and that's all I want, right? It's like I want people to, have their lives transformed, not by me, but by herbs, right? And by plants. And, if there was one reason I was in a prison surrounded by plantain and dandelion and started this journey, it was probably to get to this point where I am not leaving people behind and I'm supporting people who have been through hellish shit to kind of rediscover themselves and find help and energy and strength from plant medicines. Like, that's all I'm aiming for. Sorry, hormonal pregnant woman over here. So anyway, it is closing very soon. Tomorrow night, Thursday night. So please enroll now if you're interested, and thank you so much for listening to this episode. Okay, take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Frontline Herbalism podcast. You can find the transcript, the links, all the resources from the show at solidarityapothecary.org/podcast.